My name's Joshua Jones. I'm studying the Masters in Sporting Directorship with VSI, obviously linked now with UCFB and GIS. I'm currently studying that at the Etihad campus, which is it's nice to be around a football environment for a change. I'm currently playing for Hull FC, back rower, Great Britain International. So yeah, just winding down for the end of the season. So yeah, I'm excited to finish off strong.
Great stuff. Well, Josh, thanks for joining me today. I really appreciate it. We'll get stuck straight into VSI. What drove you to join the programme?
To be fair, I've seen quite a lot on Twitter and social media in terms of advertising it. A few of my colleagues that I know previously, James Roby and Gil Dudson, have done the course. My old CEO, Ian Blease, has just done the CEO kind of equivalent of that. And to be fair, I'm coming to an age now, I'm 27, I'm getting old. So I'm trying to find things that I can start doing after rugby.
And obviously, you've just begun the programme, but what do you hope to get from the programme? What do you want to benefit from for a career post-playing?
One thing I've always liked in life, as well as my sporting career, is being able to learn and learn new things. So the reason I joined was because, I want to get those understandings and key skills to transfer from being a sporting professional into the executive world of sport. I think with Ian and Tony and Andy, we've got a great leadership group and kind of driving that. I've obviously been on the course now a couple of months, and my colleagues are outstanding, and we've got quite a good bond already, which is nice. I've got my study buddies, which I didn't think I've not had since school. It's just getting them valuable skills that can drive me forward in the next executive kind of role of my career.
And obviously, part of working in sport, especially at those senior levels, there's a lot of networking, a lot of sharing ideas. VSI's got its own quite unique network. Delegates in the programme, speakers it brings in, people that run the course. How important is that, do you think, to go forward in a senior sports career out with playing, have that network contacts?
Yeah, huge. And to be fair, from having a rugby league background, networking's always been massive. Because obviously, it's well documented that finances aren't great in rugby league in this country. So networking kind of gives you that extra edge in kind of helping you progress through life. And I think in terms of an executive point of view and the people that I'm networking with on the course, it's important because obviously I'm from a rugby league background, but I'm trying to get into a football background in essence for an executive career. So sitting at a table with Jolien Lescott is quite surreal sometimes, especially being a big football fan. But in terms of creating them contacts, I think it's essential to building that kind of portfolio for yourself of not just football, but a list of sports. There's women footballers on there, rugby, myself, football. And then some like community coaches who are involved in the game, very knowledgeable. So it's great to pick the brains of all those people.
We kind of semi-answered my next question there about obviously the delegates in the programme are from different sports, different careers, different backgrounds, different walks of life. How important is that as well to kind of just for your own skill set, just to pick the brains of those people that aren't just from rugby side?
Yeah, I think it's great, especially in the world that we're living in now with COVID-19. I think it's great that we're all coming together and collectively trying to as a society fight this. So in terms of a professional point of view, with getting different minds and different experiences and memories and what people have been through, it's great to know people's take and understanding of the different sports and how it varies and it differs from rugby, from what I'm used to.
And did you come into the programme with a mindset of what you thought a successful or a good sports executive looked like? And has your mind changed at all over the last couple of months, or do you have a different idea as what that role maybe should entail?
To be fair, no, I didn't. I came into it quite open and fresh. Initially, I wanted to do the course because I wanted to be a football agent. And that was why I wanted to create my networking contacts and kind of understand the industry a bit better. But now I've started to do the role of a sporting director. It doesn't seem too shabby either, So, learning more and more about that role is really, really interesting. It's making me more and more want to go into that kind of side of the executive world where, I always kind of look at it and think, as you're an agent, you're kind of representing the player. Well, it's kind of similar if you're a sporting director who's representing the club. So it's quite interesting how kind of the two roles are similar, but again, very, very different. So, so it's nice to have to learn new skills and just to have a broader knowledge on the industry.
Obviously, taking what you're learning now into rugby league, are there aspects of the sport which you believe can maybe be governed more efficiently, and by obviously doing this program that you may be able to influence in the future years?
Yeah, to be fair, I think I've been quite lucky in kind of the knowledge that I've got from rugby league. You know, I've probably been at one of the top financial structured clubs in probably St Helens as a youngster, and then growing up obviously with Salford, people are aware of their financial difficulties. So, you know, I've had quite a vast variety of experience with, you know, that side. So it's good to kind of to understand and reflect a little bit on the experience I had at St Helens, the experience I had at Salford, and kind of bring them together and probably think how I would want to run as an executive. I think rugby league still has a long way to go in terms of what it needs, but you know, the way they are at the minute, I think they're doing a great job. Obviously, with the circumstance with COVID, it's difficult, but I think they've had the highest viewing records from the Challenge Cup final of the day since 2012, and you know, I think it was a lot greater than the Rugby Union Champions Cup final in the evening. So, you know, I think that we're going in the right direction. Obviously, we had Chris in last week talking about the Rugby League World Cup for next year. I think that's a massive part of the development of rugby league in this country. When I was on tour for Great Britain last year, Ralph Rimmer, even though it was a couple of years beforehand, was kind of driving that the World Cup is so important, and it's massive for the sport, it's massive for us as players. So, you know, I think obviously off the back of COVID and us getting through it as a community as one, is important to build that into next year, and obviously the broadcast deal next year as well. So, you know, there's a lot to look forward to with the rugby league, and I think with those figures coming from the Challenge Cup final, and hopefully there's similar figures for the grand final, wherever that may be, I think it's definitely in a good stead.
You mentioned obviously the World Cup next year. Excuse me, I'll start that one again. You mentioned the World Cup next year. How big do you think that is to the attempt to grow the game kind of further out of its heartlands up here in the north?
Yeah, I think it's massive. I really do. I think it's huge. I said, you know, probably off the back of COVID again, you know, there's a lot of people that are missing sport, and a lot of people that are thriving to kind of get back into that environment. So hopefully, you know, Boris and the government can come to some sort of arrangement where they can allow fans back in. And I think what a great opportunity for rugby league to be probably the biggest sporting competition in 2021. You know, and I think to kind of drive that, and almost on the back of COVID, push that, and I think it will create, you know, a great competition for all. You know, my growing up, my stepdad taking me to Euro 2004, and how Adidas and Nike helped create such a special brand and a culture within the city, not just within the game, but around the games, around the stadiums, with other people. You know, and I think we've got a great opportunity to do that. Obviously, it's known that rugby leagues are probably a north-based kind of, you know, sport, but I think there's games that are happening in London, you know, and I think one of the grounds that have been mentioned is the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, you know, and what a great advertisement for rugby league, and as a player, but and as a fan. You know, I spoke to Joe Lescott on the course and said that's a possibility for us. He said, what a stadium, you know, one of the best that he thinks he's been able to be a part of. So, you know, I think in terms of the development of this game, I think the World Cup is huge.
Do you think it's a bold move to kind of take? Is it one of the semi-finals down at, I think, the Arsenal's ground, isn't it? Is that a bold move to take a real kind of statement game out of Manchester or Leeds or similar?
Yeah, I think it is. As a player, you know, I think I'd love to play, you know, one of those big stadiums down south, and, you know, especially around London area. But I think, again, off the back of COVID, what an opportunity for rugby league to grow down south. You know, there's obviously London Broncos are down there, which they're not in the Super League anymore. But, you know, what an opportunity to grow the game. You know, and obviously COVID's been a terrible time for everyone. But with the being lack of sport, I think people have realised how much they miss it and how much they love it. And I think to kind of being, you know, a host city and being London for a Rugby League World Cup, I think what a stance and what a statement we're making.
And obviously, we'll touch back on your time at Salford. Obviously, you said the club kind of maybe lacks the financial resource of other clubs in the league. But obviously, your time there, the £1 million game, Challenge Cup run, last year's grand final. What do you put those successes down to? Is it kind of a real team togetherness?
It's difficult. I'd probably say Ian Watson's a massive factor at the club. I think the culture and the way that he pushes the players, I've not quite seen a coach be that hands-on. I think he deserves a mention for what he's done for the club. When I went, obviously Marwan Kukas was there, and then he left. So we've no benefactor, if you like, and it's all run by fans and directors. And it's such a family-orientated club. It's really nice to be a part of, and to get that success is probably a lot on the back of what Watto's done. But the conditioner, Greg Brown, he'd love a mention, because he really does. He really does test the players. He probably pushes us to our limits, and probably the one thing that, maybe the ability sometimes wasn't there. We were always the fittest team. For the 4 years I was there, which I think if you're the fittest team in any sporting environment, you've got a good chance of reaching the finals and the glory that Salford and any sporting team want. And I don't think they're that far off. Obviously, we made the grand final last year, and they've made the Challenge Cup this year. I don't think they're far off of not just getting to those finals, but not far off winning them and having some glory themselves.
And obviously, we touched on the sport trying to expand further south England, I suppose, more than anywhere else. But the RFL's trying to grow it on a global scale. Toronto, Oxford, London, potentially New York soon. What's your opinion on that? Maybe taking the game further out with the UK as well. Is that something that is a sensible move for the sport going forward?
Probably, if you'd asked me 18 months ago, I'd probably say yeah. In the environment that we're in now, I'd probably say no. Just because of obviously travel restrictions and quarantine and things like that. But I think in terms of growing the game, it definitely needs that. Whether a transatlantic team at the minute is wise with the circumstances of every country in the world, I don't think so. I think we're better off probably trying to grow the game in the north of England and potentially push down to the south if it's successful off the back of the World Cup. But I think everyone's aware that it's definitely a northern sport. I think a lot of people like Newcastle as a potential venue. I think they've got some great facilities down there in Newcastle Thunder, and they're quite on the rise. We've got a good owner. But in terms of the development, for now, I'd probably say just stick to the northwest of England or the north of England, grow it with all the clubs that are here now, and then in the next couple of years potentially look to go further again. I think the only successful club at the minute has probably been Catalan, but they've had a great financial backer. And the French seem to be a bit more lax at the minute, with obviously last night's Hull FC game getting cancelled. So COVID's quite rife in France, from what I'm hearing. But I think in terms of transatlantic, anything out of England would be quite difficult in the current climate.
I mean, even in the kind of the pre-COVID world, it seems that there's been a bit of difficulty, whether it's the sport's fault or whether it's the population's fault, but trying to grow the game further south of, say, Warrington, it seems to be a bit more of a challenge. Do you think there's a particular reason behind that? Is it because the union's so big down there? Is it trying to invade in that space, or is there a particular reason at all?
Yeah, it's difficult. Obviously, being English, we're all about football. And, and probably for me, the second best thing and the best followed sport in this country is probably rugby union. I had some time at Exeter Chiefs in 2015, building into 2016. And I think to get a city and a place like that for rugby league would be unbelievable, because there's not really any football in Exeter, so it's all rugby union. The city worship it, and I think that's probably the type of places we need to start looking. I think London's too big, that's why I think Salford struggle with the financial benefits, because there's so much football. It's hard to compete again with London. So I think if they can find a middle ground where somewhere's a big city, but not one that's driven by rugby union and football. And that's hopefully something maybe in the future if I qualify as executively and get everything and masters and learn and develop my networking and my knowledge of being an executive. Maybe that's something that I can potentially help to grow in the years to come. But I think for now we just need to just be sustainable, because I think a lot of clubs are struggling at the minute financially. So I think first and foremost, we need to get through this tough period, build into the World Cup, hopefully secure a good broadcasting deal, and then we push on from there.
Also, you mentioned the excuse me, sorry, just start that one again. I've not got the illness. It's just killing me, this bloody cough, honestly. obviously you mentioned resources. Like a lot of sports, rugby league is obviously struggling a little bit at the minute, and it's kind of tends to live kind of season to season anyway, just before this pandemic. Do you have a fear for the sport if we can't get fans into stadiums soon enough?
From what I'm hearing, I think there is quite a lot of fear from the owners and the CEOs of all the clubs in Super League. But to be fair, it's not just Super League; it's every sport. You know, I think League One, League Two in football. I think rugby union fans are really struggling to come to terms with it. I think I saw my old boss Rob Baxter, who's the director of Rugby Executive Chiefs, come out and say he doesn't know how British rugby union is going to survive off the back of this. So it's difficult to say. I think at the minute it's literally just you take it week by week, you take it month by month, and see what happens. But I think we're in a bit more of a stronger position because obviously we're a summer sport. So I think the clubs are used to having not much revenue and cash flow within the months of probably November to February, which might be a bit pushed back for next year because I think Sky might push the season back a little bit. But you know, I think in terms of rugby league, it's just about sticking together and getting through this season. They come to an arrangement, whether it's 11 or 12 team comp for next year, which I think is taking place soon in regards to Toronto. But I think it's just about sustainability at the minute, and it's just keeping clubs afloat. I know there's a huge worry, but you know, I think if like one thing rugby league has always been good at is sticking together, and I think that is probably the biggest time that needs to happen. So I think with everyone trying the best to get this season finished, honouring the contract with Sky, I think it's only a good step building into next year. And, you know, obviously with the World Cup at the end of it, it could be an exciting year off the back of so much upset and disappointment from year 2020.
Where do you see the sport in 10 years? I'm obviously in 10 years, you'll be a VSI graduate, you'll be a sports exec, and you'll be leading the charge somewhere. But where do you see the sport in 10 years?
It's difficult. It's difficult to say where I see it, to be fair. You know, when I was growing up, it's probably not much different from what I'm aware of. You know, I don't know that much of the executive life behind rugby league, but you know, I think this is a time that rugby league can probably push on and kind of get to a point where it needs to be. You know, it's such a great sport. Everyone in the north loves it. You know, each city thrive off having the club there and well supported. You know, so I think in 10 years' time, it needs to be in a lot better place than probably where it has been. But I think it's got every resource, people working hard for it, and every kind of potential to be such a great sport in not just this country, but you know, obviously Australia are driving it, New Zealand are driving it. You know, it's kind of that transatlantic kind of brand they have. It's quite important that we mirror that. You know, in 10 years' time, I'd love there to be, you know, probably more of an influx of teams. If you can get a bigger broadcasting deal to get more money and to like say potentially like a Lee, a London Broncos, you know, a Featherstone, you know, teams like that. I think if they can get themselves in and broaden the competition, have no relegation, you know, I think that's probably where the game needs to go more. So it's so financially secure, because that £1 million game I was in was probably one of the worst weeks of my life in terms of thinking, wow, I can play a game this week which could ultimately cost me my job, which isn't great for any professional player or any athlete, you know. So I think if they can stop relegation, have more of like a franchise like the NRL do, I think that's probably the way that it needs to go.
And I suppose on the back of that, my kind of last question for you. Obviously, you want to bring in more teams, a bigger league. Putting all this global pandemic aside for the minute, if you could pick one city to accommodate a future franchise, where would it be and why?
I was speaking to my wife about this. I was thinking from a player's point of view, you know, I think all the top cities in the world, you know, you look at, obviously, they had Paris Saint-Germain a lot of years ago, so Paris could be one, you know, Berlin, you know, there's beautiful cities all over the world, but, you know, that's probably not sustainable and as a, you know, as kind of an executive kind of owner type of thing. So I think in terms of if I had my executive head on, I'd probably say Newcastle. I think Newcastle is a great hotspot. I think that'd be a great place to kind of grow Newcastle Thunder. You know, I think when the Magic Weekend's been there, they've had a great turnout of fans. You know, it's been highly documented of how well supported it's been. You know, I think people like the nightlife as well, in link with the university. You know, I think it's a great city. Obviously, Newcastle United are there, but I don't think from when I watch rugby union that Newcastle Falcons have that great a following. So I think in terms of getting people through the doors and getting some revenue and creating a good infrastructure, I think Newcastle Thunder could be a great hotbed really for rugby league and to grow its reputation up there.
I think your personal fan base in Newcastle just went through the roof.
I've got friends up there, so you never know.
No, Josh, really appreciate your time today. Thank you for talking to me.
Yeah, no worries. No, I appreciate it. I enjoy things like that.